hath made known, nor why unworthy Christ in love redeemed me for his own. But I know whom I have believed, and am persuaded that he is able to keep that which I've committed unto him against that day. I know not how this saving faith to me he did impart, nor how believing in his word brought peace within my heart. But I know whom I have believed, and am persuaded that he is able to keep that which I've committed unto him against that day. I know not when my Lord may come, at night or noonday fair, nor if I'll walk the vale with him or meet him in the air. But I know whom I have believed, and am persuaded that he is able to keep that which I've committed unto him against that day.
Well, good evening, everybody. Good to see you out tonight. Saturday prayer breakfast, 9 a.m., guys. Men's prayer breakfast. You want to come out? And that'll be good. Then a week from Sunday is our Thanksgiving meal. After the a.m. service, there is a sign-up sheet out in the foyer. There won't be any evening service that Sunday night, which is the 23rd, I believe, and then there won't be a Wednesday night service. So you'll have a week off there. So that's coming up. They're starting the fence Monday, so looking forward to that. I don't know, what else we got going on, Tam? Brother Stroley came through a surgery good, so that was a blessing. I think he's supposed to be home tomorrow, so that is a good thing. Did Lana have that procedure done? Tam? Oh, she's having that. She's having her procedure done Monday, where they're going to try to remove the cancerous tissue in her stomach. So we'll be praying about that. Our choir practice. There is no choir practice Sunday. No, there is this Sunday, but then the week of Thanksgiving, the Thanksgiving meal we won't. But we are going to have. And it looks like, what are we thinking, Tam? The 22nd? Thinking about the 22nd, the 29th, and December 6th, and December 13th. Nice. So you can hit one of those.
I don't think the 29th. I think people are still traveling that weekend. The 6th and the 13th.
Okay. Hey, all right, it's working again. I think Britt's gonna have the calendar out on Sunday, and oh, it's back there already, so that it should be on the calendar. So anyway, appreciate the choir people though. That's been a blessing, and that's going pretty well. Okay, y'all. I don't know of anything else. So I'm gonna read you tomorrow's Streams in the Desert. By the way, you know, today's November the 12th. It's a very special day. It's Tammy's birthday. So if you haven't told her, say happy birthday. I won't make you play happy birthday for yourself, but yeah. This is tomorrow's streams, and it's Genesis 18:19. I know him that he will command his children. So the writer here says God wants people that he can depend upon. He could say of Abraham, I know him, that he will command his children, that the Lord may bring upon Abraham that which he hath spoken. God can be depended upon, and he wants us to be just as decided, as reliable and stable. This is what faith means. So God's looking for men on whom he can put now this is what I liked about this. God's looking for men on whom he can put the weight of all of his love and power and faithful promises. God's engines are strong enough to draw any weight we attach to them. Unfortunately, the cable which we fasten to the engine is often too weak to hold the weight of our prayer. Therefore, God is drilling us and discipling us to stability and certainty in the life of faith. Let us learn our lessons and stand fast. God knows, I thought about when I read this morning, it's something we all know, but he says, God knows you can stand the trial. He wouldn't give it to you if you could not. It is his trust in you that explains the trials of life, however bitter they may be. God knows our strength, and he measures it to the last inch. And a trial was never given to any man that was greater than that man's strength through God to bear it. So hang in there, y'all. Be faithful. Be dependable. Endure. You're on, Dennis. I wonder why the light's out in the foyer. Oh, he can see better out. I got you. Okay.
Well, she doesn't have to play, but let's sing happy birthday, shall we? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Tammy. Happy birthday to you. 473. Turn there if you would. 473. Walking in sunlight all of my journey, over the mountains, through the deep vale. Jesus has said, I'll never forsake thee, promise divine that never can fail. Heavenly sunlight, flooding my soul with glory divine. Hallelujah, I am rejoicing, singing his praises. Jesus is mine. Well, here's your opportunity to walk in sunlight as we get around and shake hands. last verse, if you will, 473. In the bright sunlight, ever rejoicing, pressing my way to mansions above, singing his praises, gladly I'm walking in sunlight, sunlight of love. Heavenly sunlight, flooding my soul with glory divine. Hallelujah, I am rejoicing, singing his praises, Jesus is mine.
All right, guys and ladies. The song tonight is page 42, I Will Sing of My Redeemer. And it's taken from Ephesians 1:7. In him we have redemption through his blood, the forgiveness of sins. I love that. The text for my Redeemer, though a joyful note of praise. Let me back up, and I'll try to slow this down. The text for my Redeemer, the one that we have on page 42, although it is a joyful note of praise, it was found in the wreckage of a train accident which had just claimed the life of its author, Philip P. Bliss. So Philip Bliss was influential in promoting the growth of early gospel hymnody in this country. In addition to being known as a man with a commanding stature and an impressive personality for leading congregational singing, Philip Bliss was highly regarded by his fellow colleagues. George Stebbins, also a noted gospel songwriter of this time, once paid Bliss this tribute. There's been no writer of verse since his time who has shown such a grasp of the fundamental truths of the gospel, or such a gift for putting them into poetic and singable form. Yet, at the age of 38, at the very height of his fruitful music ministry, Bliss's life was suddenly ended in a tragic train accident. He had visited his mother at his childhood home in Rome, Pennsylvania. During the Christmas season of 1876, he was returning by train to Chicago on December 29th with his wife Lucy, when a railroad bridge near Ashtabula, Ohio, collapsed. Their train plunged into a ravine 60 feet below and caught fire. 100 passengers perished miserably. Bliss survived the fall and escaped through a window, but frantically returned to the wreckage in an attempt to rescue his wife. As a result, he perished with her in the fire. Neither body was ever recovered. Quite miraculously, however, among Bliss's belongings in the train wreckage was found a manuscript on which Bliss had been working. It contained these significant words, and those words are page 42 in our hymn book. I will sing of my Redeemer and his wondrous love to me. On the cruel cross he suffered from the curse to set me free. I will tell the wondrous story, how my lost estate to save. In his boundless love and mercy, he the ransom freely gave. I will praise my Redeemer, his triumphant power. I'll tell how the victory he giveth over sin and death and hell. I will sing of my Redeemer and his heavenly love to me. He from death to life hath brought me, Son of God with him to be. O sing, O sing of my Redeemer. With his blood he purchased me. On the cross he sealed my pardon, paid the debt, and made me free. Well, sad story, but it's a great hymn. Remain seated. We'll just sing the first and last verse, page 42. I will sing of my Redeemer and his wondrous love to me. On the cruel cross he suffered from the curse to set me free. Sing, oh sing of my Redeemer. With his blood he purchased purchased me. On the cross He sealed my pardon, paid the debt and made me free. Verse 4, I will sing of my Redeemer and His heavenly love to me. He from death to life hath brought me, Son of God with Him to be. Sing, oh sing of my Redeemer, with His blood He purchased me. On the cross He sealed my pardon, paid the debt and made me free. Amen. That's good singing. Thank you, Tammy. Appreciate that. Let's go to Daniel chapter number 4. And is Mitch back at Mitch? I'm going to use this wireless, so or lapel, whatever it's. I think it's called a lapel. So last week we looked at chapter 3, and I think the idea I had on that was the examination of faith, or the explanation of faith. I'll look here and see. And we kind of saw how faith I called it an examination of faith. And we saw how the hey Mitch, turn the gain or something down just a tad on this. We saw how the how faith was demonstrated. So how they demonstrated their faith. Interesting story, of course, about the 3 young people, and so not sure of all the things I could have shared about that passage, but what I came to the conclusion was, and this I'll just give you the high points or the main points. Number 1, they had an enemy of their faith, and that was Nebuchadnezzar was basically confronting their faith. And that happens to us. Our faith gets confronted. We have to deal with it. And I heard a message this week about a guy talking about, the Lord said, if you confess me before men, I'll confess you before the Father. And that's an interesting principle and a promise. And these young people, of course, did that. But anyway, so we talked about that, the enemy of faith. And then we talked about the exercise of their faith. I really didn't get too deep into that. But we see that in chapter 3 where you can pick it up in verse 16. It says, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we're not careful to answer thee in this matter. Or the idea, in my opinion, on that passage, the translation, the idea is we're not anxious about what we're getting ready to tell you, or we're not worried how this is going to fall out. And then verse 17, if it be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and He will deliver us out of thy hand, O king. But if not, be it known unto thee, O king, that we will not serve thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. That's just a great picture of these young guys. So they exercised their faith. And I didn't share a whole lot about that, but we certainly see that. And then we see the experience of their faith. They had to go through that fire, and we talked about that. In life, we don't always avoid the difficult things in life. I've shared this before. When we were raising our boys, there were times when they had to go through some difficult things. I was on staff at a school, and sometimes they would get in trouble at the school, if you can believe that. And, am I going to bail them out? Am I going to go to the principal and say, hey, I didn't do any of that? Sometimes the kids had to go through things. That's just part of it. So they didn't avoid the fires. And then we talked about they weren't alone in the fire. I love that thought. It's down in verse 24. Nebuchadnezzar the king was astonished and rose up in haste and spake and said unto his counselors, Did not we cast 3 men bound into the midst of the fire? They answered and said unto the king, True, O king. And he answered and said, Lo, I see 4 men loose, walking in the midst of the fire, and they have no hurt, and the form of the fourth is like the Son of God. Isn't that awesome? So, you know, many believe that's a Christophany, where Christ was with them. So that was awesome. And then we talked about they were able to walk through the fire, and the fire didn't consume them, it didn't cripple them, it didn't conquer them. And then they weren't annihilated by the fire. The fire did not destroy them. And so, sad to say, some folks go through the fires and the fire does consume them. You know, if you've been in church for a while and you've seen people I've met a lot of people as a pastor, and sometimes when something comes into a family's life, it does conquer them. You know, it does destroy them, at least temporarily. I've seen good families have something come into their home, and it just has really knocked them for a loop and knocks them out of church. But in this passage, this fire doesn't consume them. It doesn't conquer them. And that's an awesome thought. And then we talked about their faith was recognized, the expression of their faith, and then the expansion of their faith. They were, and we didn't get to this, but look in chapter 3, verse 29, he says, this is Nebuchadnezzar, Therefore I make a decree that every people, nation, and language which speak anything amiss against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be cut in pieces. He was a nice guy, you know. And their houses shall be made a dunghill, because there's no other God that can deliver after this sort. Then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babylon. So they had this; they were elevated because of their faith. And you know, you may think in that passage, as in Daniel chapter 2, you know, Nebuchadnezzar makes these proclamations about God, the God that we worship, but he doesn't seem to be saved, you know, at least up to this point. Chapter 4, we're going to see in my opinion, the evolution of faith. So chapter 3, the examination of how their faith worked out. But in the life of Nebuchadnezzar, his faith kind of has evolved, and which probably happens in most of our life before we get saved. We didn't just wake up one day, and just get saved. There were some things, steps, and people that influenced us or whatever, prayed for us, and we came to know the Lord. So in chapter 4, Nebuchadnezzar has another dream, and my idea is it's just kind of, we see his faith evolve. And we'll see how that goes. So, pick it up there in verse number 1. Now, let me read you, just before we do that, let me read you a little intro to chapter 4. Apparently, this comes from the Bible Knowledge Commentary series. It says, apparently a number of years have transpired between the experiences of Daniel's 3 friends in chapter 3 and Nebuchadnezzar's dream and period of insanity in chapter 4. Nebuchadnezzar reigned for 43 years. His insanity lasted 7 years, and he returned to the throne for a short time afterward before he died. His last years did not take place until he had time to conclude his extensive building operations. That's identified in verse 30. Thus, the incident may have taken place about the 35th year of Nebuchadnezzar's rule, or about 570. And then that's the date I have in my Bible, is 570. You say, why is that important? Well, this would be, he concludes here, some 30 years after chapter 3. So some 30 years after the experience of the 3 men in the fiery furnace. And about, this is another interesting thought, about the 50th year of Daniel's life. So Daniel knows, we started in chapter 1, we're thinking Daniel might be 17 years old. So now we're a long ways ahead now in his life. And I thought about that, and I find that interesting because we see the picture of Daniel in chapter 4. It's just like he was in chapter 2, chapter 1, so that's a good thing. So anyway, just for you to know, there has been some time elapsed from verse number 30 in chapter 3 to verse number 1 in chapter 4. Some say around 30 years. Nebuchadnezzar, so verse 1, Nebuchadnezzar the king. So this is a proclamation. It's like almost like a decree that he puts out. Nebuchadnezzar the king, unto all people, nations, and language that dwell in all the earth, peace be multiplied unto you. Now that would be, when he says dwell in all the earth, that would be all those under his reign, okay? Which at that time, he pretty much ruled the known world. But anyway, he says, peace be multiplied unto you. I thought about that, and you know, Paul uses that greeting some in the New Testament about peace being multiplied. Verse 2, I thought it good to show the signs and wonders that the high God hath wrought toward me. How great are his signs, and how mighty are his wonders. His kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and his dominion is from generation to generation. So let me just give you a little bit about chapter 4. This is the king. He makes this decree, but he's getting ready to tell the story of how it happened, how he got to the point of where he makes this decree. So this is kind of the king looking back after it's already happened, okay? And he's going to tell the story of how he came to this place where he makes this great proclamation. And this proclamation, according to some here, chapter 3, when he makes this decree, in verse number 29 of chapter 3, I make a decree that every people, nation, language, and all that. That seems to be a conviction of his at that time, but he doesn't seem to be converted. And then it's kind of in chapter 3, it's a recognition of who God is, but he hasn't submitted to who God is yet. So there's kind of an evolution that's going. He's been exposed to these miracles by God multiple times, and God has revealed himself to him multiple times. Some people believe he never does get saved, even after chapter 4, but I think that he's converted by the end of this. Well, anyway, he puts out this decree, and then he's going to explain, he's going to tell the story. So verse number 4, and it's in first person, so he's describing, I, Nebuchadnezzar, was at rest in my house and flourishing in my palace. And I saw a dream which made me afraid, and the thoughts upon my bed and the visions of my head troubled me. So he has this dream. Verse 6, therefore I made a decree to bring in all the wise men of Babylon before me, that they might make known unto me the interpretation of the dream. So then came in the magicians, the astrologers, the Chaldeans, and the soothsayers, and I told them the dream before them, but they did not make known unto me the interpretation thereof. So we have at this beginning part, we have this proclamation, but then we have this revelation. God's going to reveal himself to Nebuchadnezzar. And Nebuchadnezzar at this point doesn't know, because it's a dream, and it's, you know, I was thinking when I was studying this morning, it's kind of like a nightmare. I mean, it's scary. You have nightmares sometimes? Just eat pizza late at night, you'll have a good one. But, you know, those nightmares, when you wake up, they seem so real. And it's unreal. You know, it's just unreal how real they are. It wasn't long ago, Tammy walked in one morning, and she'd had a bad dream. And I don't know, maybe I died in it or something, but she walked in to see if I was still there. But you know, dreams can unsettle you. But I want you to think about this, y'all. God's revealing himself to Nebuchadnezzar, and he doesn't quite know how to deal with it yet. So he brings in all the wise men of Babylon. So his go-to explanation initially is to go to the world and see if they can explain why he has this dream. And I think that's important for us to understand. You have a guy here, he's lost. He's troubled. Where does he go to fix his problem? He goes to the world. Now, in our Bible, this little group of people that he goes to, it's told us in the Bible that these people don't have the answer. So, you can hold your place there, whatever. Go to Isaiah 47, just quickly. And I want you to look, we don't have time to read all of Isaiah 47, but if you look at Isaiah 47, in my Bible, the title of the chapter says, Judgment upon Babylon. Verse 1, he says, Come down and sit in the dust, O virgin daughter of Babylon. Sit on the ground, there's no throne, O daughter of the Chaldeans, for thou shalt no more be called tender and delicate. Take the millstones and grind meal, uncover the locks, make bare the legs, uncover the thigh, pass over the rivers. Thy nakedness shall be uncovered, yea, thy same shall be seen. I will take vengeance, I will not meet thee as a man. As for our Redeemer, the Lord of hosts is His name, the Holy One of Israel. That's God. He says, Sit thou and get thee in darkness, O daughter of the Chaldeans, for thou shalt no more be called the Lady of Kingdoms. And look down in verse number 12. He says, Stand now with thine enchantments, and with the multitude of thy sorceries, wherein thou hast labored from thy youth. If so be that thou shalt be able to profit, if so be that thou mayest prevail. Thou art wearied in the multitude of thy counsels. And who are their counselors? Let now the astrologers, the stargazers, the monthly prognosticators stand up and save thee from these things that shall come upon thee. Now this is all being, it's almost in a mocking tone, okay? As in, you've been trusting in all these guys, your wise counselors. Verse 14, here's a description of how that's going to turn out. Behold, they shall be as stubble. The fire shall burn them. They shall not deliver themselves from the power of the flame. There shall not be a coal to warm at, nor fire to sit before it. Thus shalt thou be unto them with whom thou hast labored, even thy merchants from thy youth. They shall wander every one to his quarter. And look how this ends. None shall save thee. Now, guys and ladies, that's a picture of the wisdom of the world. I was reading this morning in 1 Corinthians, if you want to turn over there to 1 Corinthians chapter 2, and we have just another description of the wisdom of the world. And he says in, actually it's in chapter 1 and 2, but in chapter 1 verse 26, For you see your calling, brethren, not many wise men after the flesh, not many mighty, not many noble are called, but God hath chosen the foolish things of the world to confound the wise. And God hath chosen the weak things of the world to confound the things which are mighty. And the base things of the world and the things that are despised hath God chosen, yea, and the things which are not, to bring to naught things that are, that no flesh should glory in His presence. And then look down in verse number 6 of chapter 2. Howbeit we speak wisdom among them that are perfect, yet not the wisdom of this world, nor of the princes of this world that come to naught or to nothing. But we speak the wisdom of God in a mystery, even the hidden wisdom which God ordained before the world unto our glory. So there's a wisdom of the world, guys and ladies, but it's not gonna pan out. I was thinking about, when the Lord was before Pilate, and the Lord talks about the truth, and Pilate looks at him and says, what is truth? The world doesn't think there's any truth. Of course, we know what the truth is. Anyway, Nebuchadnezzar, go back to Daniel, Nebuchadnezzar is searching for the answer in the wrong place. Okay? And what happens in this passage is, pick it up in verse number 7, Then came in the magicians, and the astrologers, and the Chaldeans, and the soothsayers, and I told the dream before them, but they did not make known unto me the interpretation thereof. So they didn't have any answer, guys and ladies. And our world doesn't have an answer for the human condition. The suffering, the sorrow, the sin, the situations that we go through, the world has no answer for that. The only answer is Christ. He's the answer. I have on my dresser at home a little plaque. It says, the only thing that really matters is Jesus Christ. And you know what? He is the answer. He is the truth, and He is the life. Nebuchadnezzar didn't understand that. Okay, so he goes to the world. And there are so many people today, not to labor this, but there's so many people who go to the world to try to find the answers to life. And they overlook the answer that is there for them. And it's been there for them their entire life. So look what happens. But at the last, Daniel came in before me. Now let me explain that phrase there, at the last. Daniel came in before me. It means, number one, Daniel was not part of that other group. Okay? When he called for all of those magicians and all that stuff, Daniel wasn't in there. And many believe that Nebuchadnezzar called all of those others hoping to get a favorable interpretation. He was reminded by Daniel in chapter 2 that his reign would end. His reign was going to be over one day, which was not, probably comforting to him. And so he calls all over, these other guys in chapter 4 thinking, hey, maybe they'll have a good interpretation. Well, they don't have a good interpretation. So at the last, he calls in Daniel, and he knows Daniel's going to know. So look what it says. But at the last, Daniel came in before me, whose name was Belteshazzar. And I don't remember the exact interpretation of that, but maybe it's God is Baal or something like that. And that's Daniel's name, his other name, his Babylonian name, Belteshazzar. According to the name of my God, and in whom is the spirit of the holy gods, and before him I told the dream, saying, O Belteshazzar, master of the magicians. Now, again, studying through this, that doesn't mean he was over all the magicians. It just means that he was above them in wisdom. It's like he was not necessarily their supervisor, but he had superseded them in his abilities to be able to interpret, which of course he had. And so anyway, he says in verse number 9, he says, I know the spirit of the whole, tell me the vision. Well, let's read verse 9 again. O Belteshazzar, master of the magician, because I know that the spirit of the holy gods is in thee, and no secret troubleth thee, tell me the visions of my dream that I have seen in the interpretation thereof. He says, I know you know the answer. So verse 10. Thus were the visions of mine head in my bed. So he tells him the dream. I saw and behold a tree in the midst of the earth, and the height thereof was great. And the tree grew and was strong, and the height thereof reached unto heaven, and the sight thereof to the end of all the earth. The leaves thereof were fair, pretty, beautiful, and the fruit thereof much. And in it was meat for all. The beasts of the field had shadow under it. The fowls of the heaven dwelt in it, in the boughs thereof, and all flesh was fed of it. So he says, man, this tree's an amazing thing. It is providing a provision for all of humanity, basically, and the beast and all that. And then verse number 13, I saw the vision of my head upon my bed, and behold, a watcher and a holy one came down from heaven. That watcher and holy one are one and the same, basically, and it's an angel. Again, there's debate on what angel, who is the angel. Verse 14, he cried aloud and said thus, hew down the tree, cut off its branches, shake off his leaves, scatter his fruit, let the beasts get away from under it, and the fowls from his branches. Nevertheless, leave the stump of his roots in the earth, even with a band of iron and brass in the tender grass of the field, and let it be wet with the dew of heaven, and let the portion be with the beast in the grass of the earth. Now, if you've never read this chapter, this is going to be interesting to you. Verse 16, let his heart be changed from man's, and let a beast's heart be given unto him, and let 7 times pass over him. So, whoever this is talking about, this person is going to they're going to lose their mind and think they're a beast, an animal. They call that zoanthropy or something like that. It is a disease that people get, and he's going to be stricken with this for 7 years. He's going to think he's an animal and act like it for 7 times, and that's 7 years. That's explained later in chapter 7. Verse 17, this matter is by the decree of the watchers and the demand by the word of the holy ones, to the intent that the living may know that the Most High ruleth in the kingdom of men, and giveth it to whomsoever he will, and setteth up over it the basis of men. And most believe that verse 17 is the theme verse of chapter 4, and it has the idea of God's sovereignty or God's authority, God's position, God's control, His power. He's over everything. He wants Nebuchadnezzar to know that everything that has happened in Nebuchadnezzar's life, as far as his kingdom expanding and progressing, was not due to Nebuchadnezzar. It was God. God had appointed Nebuchadnezzar to defeat the Jews, and his rule and his reign was expanded by God. Nebuchadnezzar doesn't get that yet, but that's the dream. And so, verse 18, this dream I, King Nebuchadnezzar, have seen. Now thou, O Belteshazzar, that's Daniel, declare the interpretation thereof, for as much as all the wise men of my kingdom are not able to make known unto me the interpretation, but thou art able, for the Spirit of thy holy God is in thee. So here is the interpretation, chapter 4, verse 19. Then Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar, was astonished for 1 hour, and his thoughts troubled him. So the Lord reveals this dream to Daniel. And the king spake and said, Belteshazzar, let not thy dream or the interpretation thereof trouble thee. So he can see that Daniel's conflicted, and he's basically saying, you know, whatever it is, just tell me. Don't let it trouble you. And so here is Daniel's response. Belteshazzar answered and said, my Lord, the dream be to them that hate thee, and the interpretation thereof to thine enemies. Now, in the King James, it's a little hard for us to understand exactly what he's saying there, but here's what he's saying. Lord, are you saying, Nebuchadnezzar, I wish the dream was being applied to your enemies, but it's not. So this dream that I'm getting ready to interpret, it would be awesome if it was towards your enemies. And he says that, toward those that hate thee, and the interpretation to thine enemies. So basically, Daniel is saying, you know, this is not a good thing. And I wish this was going to happen to your enemies. But here it is. So he interprets. Verse 20. The tree that thou sawest, which grew and was strong, whose height reached unto heaven, and the sight thereof to all the earth, whose leaves were fair, and the fruit thereof much, and it was meat for all, under which the beasts of the fields dwelled, and upon whose branches the fowls of the heaven had their habitation. It is thou, O king, it's you. That's what he's saying. Thou art grown and become strong, for thy greatness is grown and reacheth unto heaven, and thy dominion to the end of the earth. So Daniel's first kind of interpretation is the progression and the expansion of his kingdom has been massive and great. And he said, this is a picture of your kingdom and all that God has allowed you to do. So that's the first thing. And also has the idea of contribution, of how his kingdom was contributing to God's plan by provision and protection and all that. I mean, the trees, you know, it says that they provided shade, which is protection, and provision. They ate of its fruit and all that. So Nebuchadnezzar was advancing God's program and plan, progressing the kingdom. His kingdom was contributing, but God wanted Nebuchadnezzar to know, he wanted a relationship with Nebuchadnezzar personally, and he wants Nebuchadnezzar to see that God is the one who did all that. So let's keep reading. Verse number 23. And whereas the king saw a watcher and a holy one coming down from heaven, saying, hew the tree down and destroy it, yet leave the stump of the roots thereof in the earth, even with a band of iron and brass and the tender grass of the field, and let it be wet with the dew of heaven, and let his portion be with the beasts of the field, till 7 times pass over. This is the interpretation, O king. and this is the decree of the Most High, which has come upon my Lord the King, that they shall drive thee from men. Now here's what's going to happen to him. They shall drive thee, which is you. They'll drive you from men, meaning they're going to separate him from the normal population of people. And your dwelling shall be with the beasts of the fields. You know, every morning when I walk, there's most mornings anyway, there's herds of cows on both sides of the road. Nebuchadnezzar's going to be out there with them. He's going to go out and be with the beasts. And it says, and they shall make thee to eat grass as oxen. And they shall wet thee with the dew of heaven. And 7 times or 7 years shall pass over you, till you know that the Most High rules in the kingdom of men, and giveth it to whomsoever he will. Not only does he share with him the expansion, the progression, the contribution of his kingdom, but then he talks about the destruction of it. And it's interesting, if you go back to verse number 23, he says, hew the tree down and destroy it, yet leave the stump of the roots thereof in the earth, even with a band of iron and brass. So he says, cut the tree off, but leave the stump. Don't completely destroy it. That's the idea. So, although his kingdom would be destroyed for at least 7 years as far as him ruling it, God was going to preserve him as the ruler after the 7 years was up. That's the idea. So he gets it. I mean, Nebuchadnezzar gets that, and, you know, basically Daniel says, hey, you're the tree. God's going to judge you for 7 years, and unfortunately, you're going to have to live like an ox and eat grass. And he would be insane, basically. That's the idea for 7 years. So look what he says in verse number 26. And whereas they command to leave the stump of the tree roots, thy kingdom shall be sure unto thee, after that thou shalt have known that thy heavens do rule. He said, after you come to your senses and understand who's in control, then God will let you have your rule back. Verse 27, wherefore, O king? So that verse 26, y'all, is the end of the interpretation. And he interprets it saying this, the tree's going to be you're going to be destroyed, as in you're going to be placed out on a field for 7 years like a beast until you can observe that God is God. Now, that's the interpretation. Here's Daniel's exhortation, or maybe you might even say an admonition, a warning or a thought. Look what he says in verse 27. Wherefore, O king, let my counsel be acceptable unto thee. Break off thy sins by righteousness, and thine iniquities by showing mercy to the poor, if it may be a lengthening of thy tranquility. Meaning this, if you will just repent and turn to the Lord and begin living right and doing right, it will increase your prosperity as far as time. You'll be able to enjoy the peaceful times a lot more if you do that. So here's what, so Daniel's giving him an invitation, an opportunity to turn to God. And Daniel knows if he will do that, God will not do the 7-year thing. Although it doesn't say that here. But Daniel knows if he would just repent and turn to God, that God would spare him and he wouldn't have to go act like a beast out in a field. Of course, you know, he's going to lose his mind and all that stuff. So what happens? Well, look in verse 28. All this came upon King Nebuchadnezzar, verse 29. At the end of 12 months. So how do we know that God gave Nebuchadnezzar a chance to turn to him before making him go through this painful, strange existence of 7 years? He gave him 12 months. He gave him a year. And in that year, we see the observation of God in the life of Nebuchadnezzar. He doesn't do anything. He doesn't change. So I want you to stay with me here. Nebuchadnezzar, at this point, does not acknowledge the truth that's been revealed to him. Daniel's revealed to him the truth. This is what's going to happen. He doesn't believe it. He just doesn't believe it. You know, how do we know he doesn't believe it? Because he doesn't change. So he does not acknowledge the revealed truth that Daniel gave him as being the truth. That's the world we live in, right there. I hear it all the time. These talking heads on different shows and all kinds, they all mock, they make fun, they take the Bible as something that might be good literature in helping you live right, do right, but to them it's not the truth. I mean, you really think Jesus Christ is coming back? You think there's really a heaven and a hell? You think that, you know, God is really in control? Yeah, I do. Nebuchadnezzar doesn't at this point. He doesn't acknowledge what's been revealed to him as the truth. He doesn't accept it as the truth. He doesn't act upon it as the truth. And boy, I'll tell you, that's the world we're living in today. It's sad that our world has become so... they have taken God's Word and God Himself and have so marginalized it that people don't even give two thoughts about the Bible. They don't think it's true. I mean, there are a lot of people in America, guys and ladies, that think this is nothing but just another book of man, and it has nothing supernatural. There's nothing great about it, and they don't act upon it. The problem is, after this time of observation, this 12-month period, which we see God's patience. I mentioned that on Sunday night. But God's patient with him for 12 months. But let's see what happens. At the end of the 12 months, verse 29, he walked in the palace of the kingdom of Babylon. Now, you've probably heard of the Hanging Gardens in Babylon. They were one of the 7 wonders of the world. And I read some today about that. An amazing feat that he accomplished for his wife. And beautiful beyond compare. And just Babylon itself, Babylon's walls were 10 miles in circumference at that time. Think about that, y'all. 10 miles. Those walls were 25 feet thick. I think they had a space between, it was double walls. They had 25-foot walls, and then they had a space, I think it might have been 40 feet, and then they had another 25-foot set of walls. Think about that. That was way back when, a 10-mile circumference of that, and inside of that, he had some other amazing things that they had built inside there besides the Hanging Gardens. And when he gets, some have said he's just completed this. When we get to verse number 30, and the king spake and said, Is not this the great Babylon that I have built for the house of the kingdom, by the might of my power and for the honor of my majesty? He's going exactly the opposite of what Daniel says God wants him to see. God wants him to be humble and recognize that God's in control and God's the one who did this. But no, he doesn't get that. So look what it says in verse 31. While the word was in the king's mouth, there fell a voice from heaven, saying, O King Nebuchadnezzar, to thee it is spoken, the kingdom is departed from thee. So we see here, guys and ladies, after that period of observation, the exhortation to turn, comes the humiliation. Let's keep reading. So what happens? Verse 32. And they shall drive thee from men, and thy dwelling shall be with the beasts of the field, and they shall make thee to eat grass as oxen. 7 times shall pass over thee, until thou knowest the Most High ruleth in the kingdom of men, and giveth to whomsoever he will. The same hour was that thing fulfilled upon Nebuchadnezzar. He was driven away from men. He did eat grass as an oxen. His body was wet with the dew of heaven, till his hairs were grown like eagle's feathers, and his nails like bird's claws. Can you imagine that? He immediately lost his mind, And the king's court kind of shuffled him away, and they hid him basically for 7 years as he was insane, acting like an ox. Say, wow, that's crazy. It is. Look at verse 34. At the end of the days, I, Nebuchadnezzar, lifted up. Now, this would be at the end of the 7 years that God had promised he would go through. At the end of the days, I, Nebuchadnezzar, lifted up mine eyes into heaven. Interesting. That's a picture of submission. At the end of 7 years, he recognizes who God is, his authority. He submits to him. And he says this, my understanding returned unto me. And I blessed the Most High, and I praised and honored him that liveth forever, whose dominion is an everlasting dominion, and his kingdom is from generation to generation. So what happened? We see he was transformed. Not only was he transformed physically, he was no longer acting mentally, but he was no longer like a beast, okay? Verse 35, and all the inhabitants of the earth are reputed as nothing. He doeth according to his will in the army of heaven, and among the inhabitants of the earth, and none can stay his hand or say unto him, what doest thou? At the same time, my reason returned unto me. He was able to think clearly, and for the glory of my kingdom, mine honor and brightness returned unto me. His kingdom was restored. My counselors, my Lord, sought unto me. I was established into my kingdom, and excellent majesty was added unto me. Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and extol and honor the King of heaven, all whose works are truth, and his ways judgment, and those that walk in pride he is able to abase. I know it's time to quit, okay? The very end principle of this is that very last phrase. Those that walk in pride he's able to abase. So those that exalt himself, he will humble. That's the principle. But, guys and ladies, more than that, there is this idea, before I let you loose, God wanted a personal relationship with Nebuchadnezzar. He wanted Nebuchadnezzar to recognize him. He wanted Nebuchadnezzar to be a follower of him. Now think about that. And in that, he waits for him, and he even puts him through a series, the thing about being an ox for 7 years, until Nebuchadnezzar turns unto him. And I would just say this, guys and ladies, when God's doing something in your life, he has a purpose for it. He just has a purpose. And that purpose, maybe it's to drive pride out of you. I don't know. That was in this case. But his purpose, guys and ladies, in this sense, was to see Nebuchadnezzar to see who God was and is. So, I don't know what you're going through, but maybe sometimes when you go through a difficult thing, God is trying to show you that he's able, that he wants a relationship with you, that he's patient with you, that he has the power to be able to do what needs to be done to get you to the place that he wants you to be, and that's his purpose. So, most people believe Nebuchadnezzar got good. I'll apply this stuff next week. I think Nebuchadnezzar got saved. Now, listen, y'all, chapter 4, the end of chapter 4, no more Nebuchadnezzar. He's gone. That's it. Zip, he's out of there. Chapter 5 starts his son, and or his actually I think it's his grandson. And that's the one, who the writing on the wall and all of that. So there isn't any more, it's Belshazzar. There isn't any more Nebuchadnezzar after this. He reigns a couple of more years after this, and then he dies. Just about everybody I read today thinks he was saved. There are some that don't think he's saved, and we'll find out when we get to heaven. But, again, I had like 6 or 7 things about the application, but ultimately, guys and ladies, God had a purpose for putting Nebuchadnezzar through what he went through. So, I don't know what you're going through, but God has a purpose, and that purpose is for you to recognize who he is. And hopefully, he won't have to turn you into an ox and put you out in the field for 7 years. That would not be good. So, anyway. We'll get, I know that's a long chapter and a lot to say, but we'll get some more of that next week.